The rising tensions in the Middle East. And Senator Casey, we'll start this question with you, sir. The Middle East is on edge for a potential escalation in the region, with Israel promising a retaliatory attack on Iran, and Iran now warning the U.S. it too will retaliate. Researchers at Harvard estimate the U.S. has provided nearly $18 billion to Israel since the festival attack October 7th, 2023. How do you believe the U.S. can continue to support Israel's right to self-defense while also addressing the humanitarian needs of Palestinian civilians and other civilians as this conflict spreads? You have a minute, sir.
Yeah, we have to start with October the 7th, 2023, when a terrorist organization, Hamas, invaded Israel, murdered 1,200 innocent Israelis, and in addition to murdering all those Israelis, raped women and took hostages. That threat to the people of Israel has to be defeated. It's been badly undermined so far, but it is still a threat. Hezbollah is a threat to Israel. The Iranian regime is a threat to Israel. The Houthis, so many extremist organizations in that region. We've got to continue to support Israel's efforts, not just to defend itself, but to take the fight to those terrorists that are threatening them every single day. And I'll continue to support Israel as I always have. But a big difference in this race is, while I was doing that, supporting Israel all these years, my opponent was running that hedge fund in Connecticut, the largest hedge fund in the world. I mentioned the investments in China and Russia. He also invested in a Chinese arms manufacturer that had ties to Iran, and those weapons that they produced made their way to Hamas. That is disqualifying.
Senator, the portion of this question of also addressing the humanitarian needs of the Palestinian civilians and the other civilians. 20 seconds, sir, on that follow-up, please.
You're right, and I should have added that. We have to continue to support robust support for food for people in Gaza, medicine, and medical supplies. Our government's done that. The Israelis have done it. We've got to do more. So do the Israelis, and so do countries in the region. I want to have the Arab countries finally stand up and help the people of Gaza, instead of just pointing a finger at the United States and Israel.
Mr. McCormick, same topic here. You said that the U.S. needs to show strength and provide Israel with what it needs to finish the job. President Joe Biden has warned Israel not to strike Iran's oil fields, as it could lead to further unrest. Do you believe Israel needs to show restraint in its retaliation on Iran? And how do you address the tens of thousands of civilians who are also caught in the middle of this?
Senator Casey has lied throughout this about my record. Go to bobcaseylies.com, caseylies.com. But I just want to say, I'm not going to take any preaching. As a guy who went to West Point, went to Ranger School, was the honor graduate, went to the 82nd Airborne Division, went into Iraq in the first wave when they looked like there would be tens of thousands of casualties. I'm not going to take any preaching from a guy who spent 30 years in public office and hadn't got much done. So I'm not going to take any preaching from you, Bob Casey, on that. And your lies, which are completely unworthy of you and your family and your service. So listen, what's happening in the Middle East comes from weakness. And we are being tested from our adversaries around the world. President Biden should support Israel completely. Israel is in the fight for its life. It's being attacked by Hezbollah. It's being attacked by Hamas. It's being attacked by Iran. The original sin is the Iran deal where Senator Casey was the deciding vote in 2015. It gave them $100 billion, which they have used to underwrite terrorist proxies. That's the root cause of this problem, and that's what needs to be addressed. We need to strangle Iran and its ability to support these terrorists.
Mr. McCormick, the question, if you could, in regards to Israel showing restraint. Should it show restraint in its response to Iran, especially in light of the thousands of civilians who have also been caught in this conflict?
Israel's in the best position to manage and make these trade-offs. America shouldn't preach to Israel. I went to Israel with my wife right after October 7th in early January. We saw the IDF. We saw the care they're taking to reduce civilian casualties. You want to blame anybody for civilian deaths? Blame Hamas that's hiding in hospitals. Blame Hezbollah that's located its missiles right around civilian populations where people are going to be killed. No, there's not two sides to this story. There's one side of the story. There's pure evil that needs to be eradicated, and it's threatening Israel's very existence. We also need to fight anti-Semitism at home. Senator Casey's been a weak voice on this. This is a true front battle, and we need strength and moral clarity on both fronts.
You both get 30 seconds rebuttal. Senator Casey, your rebuttal first, sir.
I agree with part of the end of that answer about this should be Israel's determination about its own security interests and what Israel has to do to defend itself from terrorism. But look, when Mr. McCormick said I was preaching, he's just preaching at me. He mentioned his service. It's commendable service to the people of our country. But this isn't a race about his service or what we were doing at that age in our life. It's about my work in the United States Senate and his work as a hedge fund CEO. And he doesn't like the fact that I talk about his record as a hedge fund CEO. When I talked about those dollars going from a Chinese weapons manufacturer through the Iranians into Hamas, that's part of his record. That's what I'm putting on the table. I'm not preaching. I'm stating a fact.
30 seconds to rebut, sir.
It's great to talk about records. So I ran a great investment firm. It invested around the world, as many investment firms do. It had exposure to China. All the investments that were made were approved by the U.S. government. But the richness of a career politician. Bob Casey, as the treasurer of Pennsylvania, approved using Bridgewater, which was the firm I worked with and for, before I ever got there. All these investments that were happening under Bob Casey as treasurer. Moreover, Bob Casey has invested $31 trillion as the treasurer in China Mobile, which had close ties. He takes lobbying money from firms that are selling drones into the Chinese military PLA. So this is not a guy that actually has much credibility on China.
Senator Casey has a 20-second. You're asking for a 20-second rebuttal.
He said in 2023 that all the decisions that were made while he was CEO, he has responsibility for. And what he doesn't want to take ownership of or responsibility for are the decisions he made as a CEO to invest in China, to invest in the rise of China after we knew that China was causing a lot of job loss here in the United States. He invested in helped Vladimir Putin just before he invaded Ukraine. And finally, if he's going to talk about anti-Semitism, I have the leading bill in the United States Senate to combat anti-Semitism. Number one, you shouldn't laugh about that. Number two is he's the one who invested not hedge fund money, his own personal money, millions of his own personal money in a website that platforms hate, Holocaust denial, and anti-Semitism.
Thank you,
That's
Senator
his money.
Casey. This is the
career politician again. His anti-Semitism bill, which I support, that was something we could agree on. He and Chuck Schumer don't have the courage to actually bring it to the floor for a vote because they don't want to alienate those radical people in their party that truly are anti-Semitic. Just like Summer Lee. Summer Lee, who's an avowed anti-Semite, Bob Casey just said that what her statement wasn't a good statement, but he actually stands by his endorsement. So this is the world we're in, where you say one thing as a career politician and your actions are another. That's the problem with Bob Casey, and that's why we need to get rid of him.
Thank you.
Do I get 20 seconds?
We're about halfway through.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to take a breath, and now we got to plow through. We have more topics for you.